host of the Questioning with Gary podcast, Gary McGee.
That's right, this is the Questioning with Gary podcast. I'm Gary McGee, and today I am joined by comedian CJ Hernandez. CJ, how you doing today?
Pretty good, Gary. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. All right, so you want to go back to your beginnings, back to childhood. What was your childhood like?
I had a really weird childhood because my dad traveled a lot for work, and so we traveled along with him.
Mm.
You know, so I was homeschooled for most of my life. We just traveled around in a bus. And I know, being in a bus with 5 people sounds terrible, but let me assure you, it was terrible.
So, how did that even work? What kind of bus was it?
It's an RV.
Okay.
You know, so
right.
The weird thing about RVs, if you've never been in one, they have the sides pop out. So when it's fully extended, it's like a hotel room. It's not that bad. It's just not great to live in it for 3 years.
So what ages were you during that time?
13 to 16, I think. So, you know, the height of puberty. That was great.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that's great for social development and everything, right?
Oh, yeah, perfect.
Who'd you get homeschooled by?
In theory, when you're homeschooled, it's like by your parents, but it was really more like myself. Like, they would just kind of hand me a book and be like, go for it. And I'd be like, all right, read the book.
Oh, yeah, because, I think a lot of people nowadays, with online and everything, I don't know how it was back then, but yeah, now with online, I think a lot of people just do online stuff. But in your case...
Yeah, you can, take class over Skype now.
Yeah.
So for me, it was just me and a book, me and some books, some DVDs. Figured it out. Turned out okay.
So now you're based in Tampa, Florida. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. So where were you going in the bus? Did you just go all around the country?
Oh, we just went all over. I think we went to 32 states or something like that.
Wow. So when you were before 13, were you living over in Florida before that?
Yeah, we were in Tampa, Florida, then we traveled around, then we came back to here for some reason.
So, let's see, so you're in Tampa, Florida right now, so what's the comedy scene like over there?
The comedy scene's doing pretty all right. I would say, we have a lot of really great comedians and not enough work or audiences that they deserve. I think it's really impressive that some of the comedians in this area are as good as they are being here, but we're really trying to work on it. There's new open mics and shows popping up all the time. We've got 2 comedy clubs that are pretty good. They pull in good talent. Really hard to crack into those as a local, though. But it's going pretty good. We just started a brand new open mic last night. That went really well.
Yeah, tell me about that. Where was that?
It was in this neighborhood over here called Seminole Heights, which is like the up and coming hipster neighborhood. So it was pretty good. Pretty good.
So, do you do open mics a lot? Is it kind of your favorite thing in comedy right now, stand-up?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I do all of the kinds of comedy. Improv. I run an improv company. I'm a writer for a sketch group, and I do stand-up. But stand-up's definitely the focus. It's a little bit easier just because it's just you, Mm-hmm. You don't have to schedule around other people. So, yeah, generally do 3 to 5 open mics or shows a week. And I know it sounds like a lot, but believe me, in other cities, people are going 3 times a day.
Yeah, I've talked to another stand-up. He said he tries to get to some kind of stand-up event 6 days a week or something like that, 6 nights a week. But he said a lot of it isn't even at clubs. A lot of it's at maybe bars or just small cafes. Is that what it's like over there?
Yeah, the one that I just started last night was at a rock and roll bar. Went pretty well. We've got coffee shops, bars. There are 2 open mics at the 2 major comedy clubs here. But most any open mic in any city, it's really just going to be at a random place that thought it sounded cool,
Yeah, absolutely. So you said you organized the open mic, the one that happened last night?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So how'd you get started with organizing that?
I used to run a bunch of open mics. I used to run this really cool one at this local pizza joint, and it was the best open mic in town. It was a full house every time. We got a really sweet deal with them where they would give $1 pizzas and $1 beers during the show. It was packed every time. It was so good. Everyone loved it until one day the vice president of the franchise walks in and just like, not in my family pizza joint, and shut it down. And like even the manager, like the franchise manager there, was like really upset about it. And now they're closed. They don't even exist anymore.
Well,
and I like to think it's our fault.
Yeah, it sounds like it was. You were the factor that brought everyone in.
Right. So it's not too hard to organize the thing as long as you know the comedians and you can present yourself professionally to a venue. So with this venue, this rock and roll bar, I basically sent them like a 3-paragraph email saying, "Hi, I'm CJ. This is what I do. I'm interested in running this kind of event. This is the numbers that we expect. This is how much it'll cost. This is the equipment thing that we need." I sent 3-paragraph email. You know what the owner replied with?
What's that?
A 3-word email. Sure, let's do it. Like, oh, okay, all right. Everyone else was saying like, no, we're not interested. No, it doesn't sound good. This guy was just like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, might as well just go with the flow, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting. So when you go to these places, what's like your end goal? Are you just trying to get things set up? Do you get like recurring at different places, recurring events going?
You mean with setting up the open mics?
Yeah, we're setting up the open mics.
Yeah, I mean it's a multi-purpose thing. Like open mics are really good for the community. We need them. We can't go and try new material at like a real show. If you have a legitimate show you're being paid for and you go say a joke you don't even know it's funny yet, you can't do that. So we need those. We don't really have enough of them around here, especially because right now football is happening. And all the bars are like, comedy or football. Turns out football fans drink more beer than comedy fans do. So they pick that every time. This bar didn't care about football. So, I mean, setting up more, it would be nice to be able to have, like, every single day an open mic. Right now, there's not really any open mics on Friday through Sunday, but the other days of the week, we have at least one. That's part of the catch of being in a smaller scene is that there's not that many open mics or shows for people to really get good at.
Yeah,
because the people in New York or LA, if you can do 3 open mics every night, if you're doing 15 sets a week, you're gonna get better fast. You ever heard of that theory that it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at something? Mm-hmm. How can you get the 10,000 hours if you're only doing 10 minutes a week, right?
That's a good
never
point.
Gonna happen. So, just trying to get that going, get the community up and at it.
Yeah, so you're kind of like organizing it for the whole area right now, trying to get it jump started.
Right. Yeah. That's the one open mic I'm running right now. Want to open a couple. There's another guy in here, great local comedian. His name is John Jacobs. He runs like 4 or 5.
Wow.
So he's really, really trying to go for it there. Yeah, we just want to see it do well. Comedians, especially if maybe in New York or LA it's different, but in anywhere else, comedians are not motivated by like, I'm going to get famous, I'm going to get rich. That's not possible. In LA, yeah, they're like, I want to get on TV. But over here, it's just a thing we like to do. It's an art form that we like to work on. All we really want is for people to listen and enjoy it and give us feedback and help us get better. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I've heard different stand-ups and different creative people say the same thing. I've talked to a couple different musicians. One of them kind of just sees it in an art form, kind of just like a creative outlet type thing, maybe get some feedback. But then I talked to someone last week, I believe, and he's wanted to go at it full time. He wanted to make it big, become a musician, and make it his living, and he's doing a pretty good job of that. So
well, that would be the dream. It's just it's pretty tricky though, So I have a day job. I work a desk job, doing cancer research. That's my day job. So I work during the day, and then at night I go do open mics or improv shows or sketch writing or whatever, and then I get 4 hours of sleep, and then I'm back at it. It's great. It's fine.
Wow, 4 hours. Right. So I heard that you worked at a morgue one time, right?
Yeah, I had a lot of weird jobs, kind of, because when I was younger, I kind of wanted to be a doctor. Like, not really because I wanted to be a doctor, but it's just kind of like, people, you got to be a lawyer or a doctor. That's the two. And then when I went to college for pre-med, and then when I got to the end and I was like, I should start studying for the MCAT, I was like, nope, not interested anymore. So yeah, I worked in, you have to get an internship, when you're doing pre-med. And I I emailed a bunch of places. I was looking for an internship to do at a hospital or whatever, and the only place that had an opening was the local morgue. And they sent me the shadiest email ever. Because I was just emailing like, hi, my name is CJ. I'm interested in internship. I'm a student, blah, blah, blah. And they said, sure, sounds great. Why don't you show up tomorrow at 6 a.m., just go around the back, knock 3 times, and ask for Larry. I'm like, at a morgue? This sounds safe.
Yeah, it looks like they're trying to get another customer there, huh?
Yeah. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I went. It was fine, but there was that moment where I was like, "Is this legitimate? Is it?" But no, it was good. Yeah, I did that. Worked in a hospital in an emergency room. Worked in like a laboratory, and nothing really. I tried everything, because I was like, oh, I'm supposed to do medicine. I'm supposed to do law. I'm supposed to do one of these things that people do that are successful, and nothing clicked for me except doing comedy. Like that's what really clicked for me.
Right. Do you have any get any of your experiences in the medical field, or maybe even at the morgue? Maybe some dark humor there. I don't know what he had you doing over there, but do you get any of your experiences in the medical field and bring that into your comedy?
Yeah, I try to. It can be really tricky. Like, for example, with the morgue, of course there are stories about the morgue. It's a crazy place. But it's hard because people get really uncomfortable when you talk about it because you talk about it so blasé. Like, there's a couple stories that I can talk about that are fine, but a lot of them are weird. Like, I'll tell you one. One day we were investigating a homicide, right? Mm-hmm. There was a shooting up in a parking lot apparently, and we were doing the work, doing the investigation, and this police officer walks in. He looks very serious. He has a briefcase handcuffed to his hand, which I didn't think was a real thing that happened, but he does. And he looks at us all really serious, and we all turn and say, "Oh, hi, how are you doing?" He's like, "Hey, do you guys want to see the evidence video?" And he opens the briefcase, and the briefcase is actually a laptop, and he loads a video. He loads a cell phone video that a witness got of the shooting, and we're like, okay. So we watch it, and yeah, sure, this guy there was a shooting in the parking lot, and you look at the police officer, and he's looking at us. You know that expression that your friend has when they show you a video on YouTube that they think is hilarious, and you're like, it's not hilarious, but they have this smile on their face, like they're waiting for you to laugh. That was his face. He just showed us a video of a shooting in a parking lot and was like, isn't this great? This is hilarious.
Oh my god. Yeah, so, I guess maybe you just get desensitized to those type of things in those professions.
Yeah.
Oh man, so you have any other stories over there? Because, handcuffed to his hand, the laptop, and then just shows you the evidence. Like, it's kind of
like
weird.
He didn't even care. Like, no one. It was a really chill place. Like, you would think that it would be like, it would be dark and serious. Like, no, not at all. One time we were doing an investigation, and the radio was always playing on the oldies station. We're in the middle of doing it, and the Bee Gees' "Staying Alive" comes on the radio, and the doctor who's working just throws his hands in the air, goes, "No, this isn't okay." He runs over to the corner and shuts it off. This is not appropriate for this situation.
Wow. Yeah. I guess it's one of those things, there could be a lot of comedy in there, but it is very dark, I suppose. Yeah,
you gotta be careful. Definitely. Like, I some of these stories are lighter, but then there's, of course, like, I can tell, like, oh, this man, he jumped off a bridge. Like, that's not funny. That's just kind of sad. But there's something to be said about finding comedy in sadness, right? There's that old saying, comedy is tragedy plus time. But honestly, I really prefer to talk about, just like, I'm a little more observational, I guess. Mm-hmm. Either observational or the self-centered, self-deprecating kind of humor. So I have these experiences, and I like to bring them out for variety's sake, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's my main focus, because, like I said, it's very tricky for people to relate to a lot of the stuff in the medical field unless they're in the medical field.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like with the dark humor stuff, I think a lot of people do that just for the shock value.
Yeah, it's very frustrating because it can be done really well, But I feel like there are some people who they see someone like, are you familiar with Anthony Jeselnik?
Yeah, I've seen some of his stuff, yeah.
They see him doing all these shock one-liners, and they're like, oh, this is so funny. And then they go try to do shock one-liners, and no one laughs because the shock humor has two parts. It has shock and it has humor. and sometimes they're missing the second part.
Right. Yeah, to just do the only shock part probably doesn't work too well. All right, so I want to take a quick break, and then after that I want to talk to you a little bit about your future in comedy and what that is in store for you.
Yeah, all right.
All right, so we'll just take a quick break, and we'll be back right after this. Oh, hey, everybody. Gary here. I just want to remind you to check out questioningwithgary.com. As you write on questioningwithgary.com, you'll find all the other podcasts, and you'll also find some social media info. Aside from that, you'll see all of our Questioning with Gary videos, including the time when I went to the Trump rally and interviewed some Trump supporters, or the time when I went to Comic-Con and interviewed some nerds. That's right, it's all on questioningwithgary.com, so just head on over. Alright, and we are back, and I am here with comedian CJ Hernandez. So, CJ, I want to go to a little bit, saying that you talked a little bit about to me before, about your the weirdest gig you had in comedy.
Sure, yeah. So being a local comedian in a place that isn't really a big scene, you have to go outside to do shows, outside of your area. And I think a lot of comics will have the same experience where you take what you can get. I've heard some crazy things. For me, it was there was this show at an RV park. Like just in the clubhouse of an RV park. And I mean, it was kind of like home field advantage for me, I guess. Because like I said, I lived in the RV, so I was like, ooh, I can make fun of this material. They didn't like me making fun of it, though, because they're like, this is our lifestyle. Don't talk about this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like, they were like, oh, we need to have a clean, family-friendly set at this RV park in Orlando. And I'm like, okay. So I did it. There were like 6 people there, and I got paid a hot dog and some beer, and it was great. It was fine.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. Anytime you get paid in beer, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, what kind of jokes? Yeah, what kind of jokes did you tell during that?
Well, it wasn't too hard because honestly, I actually work pretty clean. Like, I would say I work PG-13 generally. So like, I don't really curse. It's not like, oh, it's a point of like, oh, I have to work clean. It's just like, I don't know, man. I'm talking about like mayonnaise and stuff. Like you don't have to curse when you're talking about mayonnaise. It's just kind of, that's something Jim Gaffigan said.
Right.
Where he said that if you're talking about mundane things, there's no reason to curse. Like, not that I won't. If I have a joke that it makes sense, I will, but I just tend to not. So for me, when they're saying, oh, work a family-friendly set, I'm like, sure, that's fine. I just did the exact same set that I always did. Totally fine.
So what kind of premises do you have? Where do you get your ideas for these premises mostly then?
I have a big old document. I have a Google Doc that throughout the day, you got it on your phone. If I have any thought that I think might even be a little bit funny, I will just write it down there. So right now, let's see. I have let me count. I have about 30 pages in Google Docs of like premises and stuff, and some of them I've made into jokes. Some of them end up in tweets. Some of them don't. Some of them get thrown away. I don't. I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. Jerry Seinfeld said that like a good joke like occupies a hole in your brain. That you remember it because it makes you think of something in a different way. So I like to really try to aim for that. I feel like a lot of the premises that I'm talking about, it's not something that it's like everyone has these thoughts, but then they forget them. Mm-hmm. Like if you wrote down every weird thought you ever had, you would have a stand-up comedy act. It's just that people don't take it. They think, oh, that's weird that military-grade glow sticks are a thing, and then they just drop it. Then they just forget about it later. They don't write it down and say, oh, what are they doing? They're having raves in Iraq? Like, okay.
Right, yeah. I've talked to some other comedians, and some of them just go down, and when they're writing their material, they just sit down and just get out a pen and paper and just a computer and just start typing away, start whatever they think of. And yeah, some people I've heard do what you do, where yeah, they just get an idea in their head, and then they just make a note of it, and then later they can just flesh it out into all these different scenarios and different ideas.
Yeah, exactly. I've never had good luck like sitting down and forcing myself to do something. You can. What is it? They say success is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. So you can brute force it, and a lot of people do. It's also harder for me having the full-time job. Where during the day I can't necessarily sit down and take an hour to just sit there and write. I just have to briefly, like, oh, I have an idea, write it down, look at it later, figure it out.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think your favorite joke? Just the premise, because you wouldn't say the joke here. It's kind of a weird format to do that. But what premise do you think is your personal favorite?
I have a nice chunk about religion, which is interesting. Like, not religion really, but about churches, because I think it's really interesting that a lot of people, if you tell jokes about religion or about God, people can get really offended or like on edge or whatever. So I take it as like a personal challenge to try to find jokes in that concept that are more universal. So like I talk about how it's really weird that like Protestant Christians can just set up a church literally anywhere and be totally happy with it. Like they'll set it up in an abandoned Pizza Hut and be fine, But Catholics have to make a huge deal because my family was Catholic. Or just talk about how the signs or the way they advertise is weird, or the names that they call themselves are really strange. Like I feel like you can tell what kind of neighborhood you're in by how long the church's name is. If you walk by a place and it's like, oh, St. Paul, great, that's a normal church. If you walk by and it's like, oh, Jesus Christ, Holy Redeemer, Lord of the Universe, repent now, you're like, oh, okay, be careful.
Yeah,
I see.
They might want to go around somewhere else. So have you ever dealt with someone that got offended by your jokes, or have you ever had to deal with a heckler?
Not very often, because like I said, when you're actively trying to be like non super edgy, people don't tend to get too mad. I do have one joke that I have this joke about the monorails at Disney, where it's like when you used to be able to go to Disney and ask them to ride in the cockpit of the monorail, and then they stopped doing it. And I asked them why, and the person told me it was because of 9/11. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense at all, because no terrorist would want to hijack a monorail. You can't crash it into anything. It goes in a circle, right? It's not an act of terror. It's an act of kind of inconvenience. Someone got really upset when I told that joke once, because they were like, actually, the reason why you can't do that anymore is because there was a monorail accident a few years ago, and my friend was killed in that monorail. Wow. And I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
All right. On the other hand, that means that instead of owning up to the problem, Disney did what everyone else likes to do, which is they just blamed 9/11.
Yeah.
So that was also just weird in and of itself. But I told a joke about Lyme disease one time. I was just like, it's not fair that Spider-Man gets bit by a spider and he becomes Spider-Man. I got bit by a tick and I got Lyme disease. And some guy came up to me, oh my gosh, do you really have Lyme disease? Like, no, it was a joke. He's like, oh, I have Lyme disease, I thought.
Oh.
And he walked away, and I was like, oh, I'm sorry.
Wow, what a
It wasn't even a very good joke.
He wanted to be able to get some some friendship in someone else who had Lyme disease.
Right.
And then...
Yeah, exactly. And I felt bad. But as to hecklers, I've almost never really dealt with like an aggressive heckler. But there's a couple kinds of hecklers. Not all hecklers are the "you suck, you're not funny" kind. Any drunk person talking during a show is a heckler, even if they're like trying to help you. The worst thing that happens to some comedians is like if they're telling a joke and the punchline is a little bit obvious, and a drunk heckler will shout it out first. And just like ruin your flow, because you're like, oh, that was what I was building up to. Thank you so much. But you just kind of have to play with them just a little bit. Like I find if you just satiate their curiosity without encouraging them, so they're talking, they're into it, like they're enjoying the show. They're just not enjoying it in the right way.
Yeah.
But a lot of people just be like, oh, tell them to shut up, and it's like, well, now you just upset them more.
Yeah.
There's ways to handle it. I haven't had to do too much of that so far.
That's good, yeah. Especially if you're like some small venue and some drunk guy just randomly starts talking during your set, wants to be an active participant.
Right. It's not a two-way show. Stand-up comedy is the illusion of conversation. All of the best comics, it almost feels like they're just talking to you.
Right.
You're talking with them, but they're the only ones that are talking. But with a good comedian, you can just suspend that disbelief in a way. It stops being a performance of a person, and it's just them on stage talking and being interesting, and being funny. But then when you have that, then people are like, oh, this feels like a conversation. I should converse.
So you recently got to the semifinals of Florida's Funniest Comedian, right?
Yeah. We're in the midst of our statewide competition right now.
Oh,
It's
wow.
pretty cool. It's called Florida's Funniest Comedian. We just had the preliminaries for Tampa and a couple other cities. There were like 20 comedians on the main stage of our local improv club. It was really fun. It was a really good show, and I moved on to the next round. I was surprised, but I'm really happy with it. Because when you go into a comedy competition is really tricky because it's a subjective art. Particularly when there's two ways to judge a comedy competition. One is by crowd response, which is okay because it's like, oh yeah, it's based on who the crowd liked the most. But on the other hand, that just makes whoever can pack the room with their own friends wins, right? So that has flaws. The other end is for judges to do, which is what this one was. But then you have the flaw there where it's like, oh, but maybe what their opinion of what's funny wasn't like what the crowd's opinion or what everyone else's opinion was. So like there was a comic or two at the show who a lot of people were like, oh, they killed it. They should have moved on, and they just didn't move on because it was judged,
Yeah.
But not looking too closely, I'm not going to win. There's no way. There's so many good comics in Florida. There's so many good comics in Tampa alone.
Yeah.
I'm just happy to be up there with them.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a great show. If anyone listening is in the area, that is November 16th at 8 p.m. That's a Wednesday at the Tampa Improv. You can get free tickets if you just shoot me a message on Twitter or something, which is at NotOKCJ, OKAY.
There you go. Yeah. I think this one's gonna come out around November 11th. So
So
it's gonna
this
be right
week,
before-
people.
Yeah, this week.
Yeah.
All right. So where's that? Where did you say that was?
That's at the Tampa Improv.
The Tampa Improv. All right.
Yeah, that's our local. The Improv is a big chain of comedy clubs. That our local one here down in Ybor City. It's a nice area.
Sounds good. So what do you think the future holds for you in terms of comedy? Like you said, you did some improv, right? And then so now your love is stand-up. What do you think the future is? Just keep performing and having fun?
Yeah, I'm trying everything I can. Doing stand-up as much as I can, doing improv, writing sketches,
Right.
hoping to try to produce some YouTube videos or something like that. It's something that I would love to be a full-time endeavor, but it's very hard to get to that point, especially in a smaller city like this. Like in Tampa, no one can survive full-time on stand-up comedy in a smaller city. There's just not enough paying gigs, and there's too many comedians. So the eventual hope would be to get to the point where I can move to a different city, New York, LA, Chicago, even one of the smaller scenes like Denver. I just took a trip to Denver. They have a fantastic scene in Denver. Tons of good comics, tons of shows. It's a really great place.
Yeah, I heard that. I heard like some club there that comedian comics just absolutely love.
Yeah, Comedy Works is one of the best clubs in the country.
Right. Yeah. Sounds good for your future. Do you wanna go ahead and plug anything before we get ended? You plug your Twitter. You wanna plug that one more time?
Sure, yeah. You can follow me at Twitter, which is at NotOKCJ. That's okay with a OKAY, not a okay, just okay. I did take the NotOKCJ without the AY and just posted a tweet saying, you're at the wrong Twitter, just in case people. NotOKCJ. My website, you can look at it. It's cjcomedy.com. You can see upcoming shows and all of that. Shows, tweets, whatever. I'm on a mission to have the worst Twitter in Tampa. Just the worst puns every day. All of the garbage jokes that I think of that I don't actually use on stage, I put them on Twitter, and everyone gets really mad at me for it, which is great. I'd have to say that the number one motivation for me doing comedy is probably like the little angry face on Facebook that people can do now. That's my favorite. I love that.
Sounds good. So, CJ, thanks again for doing this.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. It was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So, once again, for CJ Hernandez, this is Gary McGee saying good day, good night, goodbye.